What's going on, guys? It's Bruce Madsen, your host of the show. No name yet, but that's all good because I'm your guy for NFL Draft, Dynasty Fantasy Football, Redraft, DFS content. Something you're into, make sure you hit that subscribe button because I'm going to get you set for them rookie drafts coming up, and I'm going to get you ready for that NFL draft so you're in the clear. And today's topic's very interesting because yesterday Mel Kiper came out with his first mock for this year's draft, and as always, it created a lot of controversy, a lot of misunderstandings with what Kiper and other big media mock drafts are trying to do this time. Daniel Jeremiah's, McShay's, so forth. But I just want to dig in on some of the picks, or a couple of them, and then cover what they're actually trying to do here in early January and some things that may be impacting their mock draft. So the big thing with Kiper's mock draft is he had Devonta Smith as the number 2 player off his board going to the Jets. Of course, he is expected to be in the first round. He is expected to be at least the second wide receiver drafted behind Jamar Chase. That created a lot of controversy amongst a bunch of people who are really in the know with the NFL draft right now, who's been studying these wide receivers. And with Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft that came back last week, he had Tutu Atwell in the first round going to the Packers, and then he also had Kadarius Toney going in the first round, but leaving off a lot of the wide receivers who are also very talented and very productive. With that being said, one thing I want you guys to focus on is a lot of these big name analysts, they have contacts, they can talk to scouts, they can talk to people from organizations. So their rankings, those mock drafts, they can be heavily influenced from those conversations, not from their actual scouting portfolio or from what they see, because mainly they just want to get it right for the draft. And they're not held as much accountable to what these players do 5 years from now. So if they're closer to where Kadarius Toney gets drafted, if he goes in the first, then that's a win for them, whether he's a bust or not. Another thing with this is they want to sell subscriptions. They need clicks. So the best thing they can do early on in the process is create ridiculous mock drafts or out-of-order mock drafts. And then when it comes to their 2.0 mock draft in a couple weeks, the one after that and the one after that, they can sell those changes. When they sell, if they have nothing to change for their second or third mock draft, then they are not going to be able to sell you, because then people will be onto it. Hey, these mock drafts aren't changing. What's the point? I'll just stick with the first one. So they'll have their mock drafts very rough in the beginning, and they'll tailor it down the line towards the end. And you'll notice down the end there'll be some big changes that become pretty accurate. Last year on some of the big media's mock drafts, Brandon Ayuk started going in the first round towards the end of draft season. We saw that with Brashad Perriman. Kiper was on that, and it was actually kind of pretty early, maybe about a month or so before the draft. And they'll start making these big, I guess you'd say, proclamations closer to the draft, and those big changes there that are head scratchers seem or more likely to be accurate because they're just getting data from scouts, teams, organizations, and they're throwing that into the mock draft. They're not always the best. That's big media. They don't have to be. A lot of what I hear is that from people, analysts and stuff, is that Kiper and them are out of touch with what's going on. And from a business standpoint, they might be out of touch to the point that they may not be in depth as someone who's really been digging into the wide receivers, running backs, and quarterbacks for multiple years. However, they're in touch enough to where they know what's going on with these players. However, on the flip side, they're also running a business. They're selling themselves. They're the head person for a brand, and they need to have their content manipulated to a certain way to get clicks, to add revenue for their companies. And if it was perfect right off the get, or if their draft wasn't as unpolished as it is now, then come March, April, May, when they're trying to sell this content to us, we don't need to buy in because we already got everything in January. They're just building us up. They're building us up for these changes come along. They do this every year, and they'll do it next year and the year after. This is not new. I've seen this for years from them. This is why Kiper still has a job. This is why Daniel Jeremiah does what he does. This is what they do. It's just a business move for them to keep content rolling, to keep us engaged, and it's something we really shouldn't hyper focus on anyways. At the end of the day, a mock draft is a mock draft. A mock draft should not be written in stone, no matter if I wrote it, this guy wrote it, lead analyst for ESPN writes it, because there's going to be a lot of misses. Trades throw things off. Players slipping throws things off. Injuries, bad interviews, people getting arrested, players getting arrested. All kinds of things can change between now and the draft. It's a good gauge. It allows people who are not in the know, the casuals, who should be projected to be in the first round or the top players, and give them an idea of what teams they could potentially go to. But it's still a gauge. It allows people to get that information, and it's easy to digest. That's pretty much what mock drafts are good for. For an accuracy standpoint, something you don't want to lean on. Fantasy football-wise, you can use that to gauge where a player's draft capital could be. But this early in the game, it's not really smart to use as concrete or predictive. Thank you guys. I hope you guys like the content. I'm trying to pump this out as often as I can, almost daily, with very few days off. Make sure you catch my written content at dynastyleaguefootball.com and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss another episode. I'll catch you next